5 years before I deadlifted 600 pounds, I suffered a debilitating back injury that left me wondering if I'd ever lift again. In fact, 3 different physiotherapists told me I wouldn't. But years later, after becoming a physio myself, I realized that they were wrong. Not because I didn't want it bad enough, but because the advice that I was getting was completely wrong. So here's what no one tells you about coming back from a serious injury, and the 3 principles that completely changed how I recovered. So the injury itself happened during a heavy training lift. I was snatching about 95-97% of my max. I felt something pop in my back, but like most lifters, I walked it off and tried to pretend that I was fine. The next day, I could barely move. What was supposed to be a couple days of rest turned into multiple months of constant pain. I went to 3 different physiotherapists, and each one gave me exercises but no real plan. No explanation of what was safe, no explanation of what progress would look like. I'd rest, I'd feel a little better, I'd push it too hard, and then it would flare up again. It became this vicious cycle of bouncing back and forth between the 2 states of injured and just barely recovered. Working long restaurant shifts didn't help either. I was on my feet all day, I was constantly twisting and bending and carrying heavy pans. Everything hurt. And putting on my socks became the hardest part of my day, let alone trying to lift a barbell. The turning point came when I met an osteopath who actually listened to me. It's kind of ironic because 3 physios failed me and I became a physio, but that's a story for another time. This practitioner, she listened, she explained my imaging to me, she explained to me that nothing was broken. She also taught me how to control my pelvis and brace again, which were 2 of the areas that were really lacking in my recovery. And I'll never forget this, within 5 days after seeing her, it was the 2nd or 3rd time, I added 35 kilos to my squat from the week before, and it was pain-free, whereas I had previously been lifting in 10 out of 10 pain every single day. In short, it was the most revolutionary rehab experience that I had ever had. That experience completely transformed everything that I believed about recovery. Looking back, there were 3 principles that made the turnaround possible. The first key was do what you can when you can. If your capacity is limited, it's really important to determine where you're at such that you can take yourself to where you are not. This means exploring what are the weak links in the chain, and which of these can you improve upon while appropriately managing risk of further aggravation to the injury. So we have 10 skills that make up fitness: strength, stamina, endurance, balance, speed, accuracy, coordination, power, flexibility. What the fuck's the last one? Agility. Which of these can you improve upon? Because you're not the best at all of them. Whatever activity you do is going to make you good at some of these things and not great at others. You might have really great upper body mobility, but really bad lower body strength. Or you might have really great stamina, but really poor hip mobility. When I stopped focusing on what I couldn't do and started training what I actually could, mobility, balance, conditioning, even grip strength, things started to change. You always have to be thinking about what can you do during a given moment in time? What are the weak links in the chain that you can address and strengthen? It might be your grip strength. It might be your wrist mobility. It might be your squat technique. Different things can be addressed at any point in time because you can't work on everything all at once. The second principle was don't pick the scab. What happens when you pick a scab too much? That tissue takes way longer to heal and it becomes more irritated and sensitive as a result. I used to test my back every couple of days just to see if things felt better. And testing it meant lifting heavy and trying to do the things that I previously could do pain-free. And every time I would set myself back further and further because I was further sensitizing the area to the load that I was imposing on it. So instead of measuring progress by how much load was on the bar during a squat or a snatch or a clean and jerk, I started tracking things like how technically competent was I at the movement? Could I progress the tempo of the movement? Could I progress the speed of the movement? Could I look at how difficult a given weight was and see if I could make progressions at that weight rather than just trying to increase the weight over and over again? I kept using pain as a progress marker, but it wasn't the only progress marker. And that's probably the biggest mistake that you can make when you're injured, is thinking that the only thing you're trying to improve upon is how much pain you have with a given movement. The last principle, and this is going to seem like common sense, is you have to listen to your body. You know it best. Some days it's going to be appropriate to pull back. Some days it might be appropriate to push. The goal is to maximize training within the limits of consistent tolerability. Sometimes rest is warranted. There are some circumstances wherein the most reasonable course of action is to not train, but sometimes low-level activity is warranted as well. More often than not, we do want to keep training, but we do need to be cognizant of how we're feeling. Is a given area or position or load contributing to excessive pain? Is it giving you warning signals? Or are things feeling perfectly fine and we can just keep doing the thing that we're doing without having to steer so far off the beaten path? Some days you pull back, other days you push. Once I started following these 3 principles, progress stopped being random. It actually became quite predictable. And in a nutshell, that's how I rebuilt my strength from the ground up pain-free. So here's how you apply this in your own training. Do what you can when you can. You have to pick some parameters that you are not as great as you could be at, but aren't going to make the injury worse as a result of training. If you have a shoulder injury, maybe it's your knee strength. If you have a hip injury, maybe it's shoulder range of motion. It's going to be based on your individual context, but which of these can you appropriately practice without increasing the risk of further aggravation to the injury? For Don't Pick the Scab, we want to have an understanding of what movements or positions or loads cause pain. We also need a framework to help make decisions around how much pain is appropriate to push forward through with activity and when is it more appropriate to scale back. I actually have a guide that I put together that walks through some of the more nuanced parts of the decision-making process for this sort of a situation. I'm going to link it in the bio below. You're welcome to download it, totally free. I'm hopeful that it'll help some of you. For the third element, listen to your body. If something feels terrible, pull back. If it feels fine to move forward with, build progression gradually and sustainably. The goal is consistent, tolerable progress, and that's what helps you move forward to the goals that you are trying to achieve. Go all in on what you can do and create an action plan to work towards what you can't do. That injury that I was talking about forced me to rebuild from the ground up, and now I'm the strongest I've ever been with the least amount of pain that I've ever experienced. If you're a lifter who refuses to settle despite injury, hit that subscribe button. This channel is all about bridging the gap between rehab and performance so that you can lift, move, and live stronger and pain-free. Thanks for watching.